Hi everybody, it's Leah with Family Heritage Living. I thought for today's video, it has been a really long time since I've done a reading about a story from times past, so I thought today I'd go ahead and do one. Also, I thought that at the end of this video, I was going to put some videos of the house that we have up for sale and an update there. We do have an offer on it, and we had the appraisal yesterday, so by God's grace, everything will go just splendidly. In the meantime, we'll just go ahead and get into the story and hope you guys enjoy this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe and share. It really does help us get out there and get people to find us when you guys do that. All right, so for those of you that saw my video the other day explaining my two sets of glasses, you just have to bear with on my cat ears up here. This story, I am going to guess, there's not a date with it. I don't have a date anywhere to give me any idea, but I'm going to guess that it was probably the late 1800s. Wintertime arrived in our locality with a ferocity that could equal anything Jack Frost at the North Pole could possibly conjure. The east wind would blow and was very capable of creeping through everything, the doors and windows, clear through the heaviest clothing, never stopping till it arrived at the marrow of the bones. Rags were stuffed around all the cracks in the windows and doors. The stoves were red hot, all the rooms shut off but two. These were the kitchen and the living room adjoining. I was required to wear a long-handled all-wool union suit and two pairs of wool stockings held in place by a confusing harness that took all of the ingenuity I could muster to don in the cold black morning of midwinter a pair of black bloomers, a wool-plated skirt, two wool sweaters, and high-top lace shoes. At night, we all slept in one bed, my father and mother at the head, and we two children at the foot. The studio couch was opened up for these occasions, and all the blankets from the other beds in the house were piled on. The fire would go hot all night, and still only 10 feet from the stove, a pitcher left on the table full of water cracked and broke from the ice that had formed. In the morning, the floor would be covered with a whiff of snow, which had eluded the rags around the door and windows. Jack Frost would leave the windows decorated with the loveliest pictures of ferns and other greenery, perhaps to remind us that winter would eventually pass. The snow would be piled up 6 feet deep and occasionally drift high enough to cover all the windows. Daddy would shovel a tunnel up through the snow and tread a path over the barn to do the chores. All the animals were imprisoned in the barn with a short walk shoveled out to the watering trough, kept de-iced by a steady stream of running water. The sheep always had bad colds, running eyes, and noses stuffed and barely able to breathe. On days like these, we children would be unable to attend school as the roads were all snowed in. This would often last for a month or more. We were always prepared by these occasions with a barn full of hay and sacks of grain for the animals. They provided us with milk, eggs, and meat. The cellar dug away back into the hill and were filled with hundreds of quarts of canned fruits and vegetables, jams and jellies. Many boxes of apples were stored there, also Hubbard squash that were piled in corners ready to be used for pies and what have you. Potatoes, carrots, and turnips were stored in large bins, also sugar and flour in abundance. A tank of kerosene had been filled in the fall in readiness for the lamps. The large woodshed was filled to overflowing with wood. What fun those days were. A full morning's digging would produce the loveliest show house ever. Snowmen stood guard all over the yard, and many an hour was spent sliding down hills with our sleds. Many times our father would join in. It was pleasant to have our high-spirited daddy around. We would shout and cavort and throw snowballs and race on the sleds. By and by the snow would pack and the cold abate. The snowplow at last came up our road and freed us from our white-walled prison. One afternoon, our father spoke up. "Mother, get the children ready. We're going down to the Birdwells for a visit." We hadn't seen anyone but us for 2 months. Daddy went over to the barn and hitched up Peter, our old white horse. He was harnessed to a sled in which lots of hay had been piled, with blankets laid across the seat for which the snow had been swept. Then he drove over to the house. Mother had heated up several sad irons. Sad irons? The irons we put on the stove to iron the clothes. Mother heated up the stove with several sad irons, and some people call them sat irons, some people call them sad irons. and wrapped them in newspaper. We children were bundled from head to toe till we could hardly be distinguished from a ball of yarn. We were tucked well down into the hay amid the hot irons, and again wrapped warmly. Mother and Daddy would then climb up into the seat in front. Daddy snapped the reins against Pete's muscular flank, and we were on our way. Old Pete never trotted. He was the big plodding kind, and the snow flit from each hoof as he clumped along. Maz, the big collie, trotted alongside. I stared at the design his legs made until they became a lot of rhythmic blur. Then my attention would be drawn to the silence of the moment, broken only by the squeak of the sled runners in the snow. The forest through which we passed hung heavy with great weight of snow. Here and there was attractive little rows designed in the road. In response to my inquiry, Mother would answer that a rabbit had passed by recently. The sky was overcast with clouds and seemed very close. By and by, we emerged from amid the trees and reached the highway. We continued west for another mile, following the gray river that followed alongside. We next turned left over the railroad tracks and down the lane to Aunt Birdwell's. She was a woman in her 60s, a very pretty woman, I realized later as I grew older. Her hair was gray and done in a knot at the top of her head. Her dress was all denim material and striped like mattress ticking, which draped about her quiet, attractive figure in billows of nearly reached her ankles. In summer, she always wore a sunbonnet made of the same material. When she visited with company, she, unlike the others, sat in a straight-back chair, tilted against the wall, with her feet hooked around the front of the legs. This, of course, was entirely modest, as her ample skirt covered everything. We would have been spotted long before we arrived and were greeted most warmly. Auntie always had a present ready for us children, and this time it was a balloon. A pig had been recently butchered, and the bladder was saved and blown up for us. Walter and I were at home immediately. We stepped into the large kitchen first as we entered the big high-ceiling house. It was very neat. All the pots and pans were hung on nails on the wall. There was a large table with a cloth checkered design laid over many humps and bumps, which indicated that many goodies were stored in those depths.
What did it mean, a pig's bladder?
You've heard the stories about people used to, when they butchered a pig, they would save the bladder and blow it up and play with it.
Like the balloon?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
We continued on into the living room. The grown-ups would sit down to visit. My brother and I were permitted to roam the house at will, provided we touched nothing. The furniture was Victorian, heavily ornamented, and the rugs gaily flowered. The room adjoining the living room was a parlor. In the middle stood an ornate library table. In the center of this table was a very decorative lamp with baubles of glass hanging and glittering all colors as the light caught on the prisms. Large, soft black leather chairs and couches finished off the room. I remember one particular picture hanging on the wall. It was long and narrow, consisting of several dead game birds hanging by their feet. We would then open the door to the bedroom, but we could never see the top of the bed. It was a huge feather creation covered by a spread far over our heads. In the living room, the elders would be seated about the stove listening to Aunt Birdwell. In a shrill, piercing voice, she was relating the latest gossip of the community, stopping periodically to pick up the party line telephone when it rang, never mind whose ring it was, catching up with more news by eavesdropping and passing it on, perhaps a little embellished. I have never since known anyone capable of spreading more gossip and scandal farther and faster than our Auntie Birdwell. All too soon the short afternoon would wane, and we would don our wraps, loaded in behind old Pete, and head for home. Arriving home by dark, the folks would stroke up the fire, light the lamps, build a fire in the kitchen range, and Mother would cook supper while Daddy milked the cow and did the chores. As soon as supper was over and the dishes done, a folding table was set up, and the rest of the evening would be spent playing games, anagrams, dominoes, or checkers. Some of the games were our own creations, such as the drawing game. In rotation, we would designate a subject to be drawn on the paper, which had been passed out to each other. Naturally, each player would have a mental image of what his drawing would be, and would be quite annoyed if someone called for a horse when his heart was set on a hearth-side scene. At the end of the game, the picture was passed around, and we had a merry and a hearty laugh over them. Bedtime arrived, and we children were tucked away to listen drowsily to the murmur of our parents until oblivion overtook us and the Sandman was in complete control. So the winters would pass till the snow began to melt, and violet bluebells and Johnny jump-ups popped through the warm earth to announce springtime had at least arrived, and she was very welcome. I know that for anyone that is like probably mid-US down and not in the mountains, the idea of some of the descriptions are probably only ever heard in Laura Ingalls Wilder's The Long Winter book, but for anyone up higher towards the Canadian border or in Canada, those winters used to really be that way with our airtight houses and our central air. I think many of us just disconnect so much that we just can't imagine. It almost sounds like it's made up. But living in the UP, I can see before there was, I mean, she mentioned a snowplow coming down the road, but that would have been drawn by horses. That wouldn't have been snowplows like we imagine or we know them as. So definitely something I can see very common back in those days in the right location. All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed this video. And again, please subscribe, share this video so it gets out there so other people that are interested in stories of the past or the devotions that we share will find us. And we will talk soon. God bless. Hi guys, it's Leah with Family Heritage Living. We are out of the house right now. Update here, we actually had an offer on the place last week and we accepted it. This is actually our second offer. Our first one fell through. Long story, doesn't matter because it didn't happen. But this one looks like it's going through. We have the appraiser, well, the buyer has the appraiser coming out today for his mortgage company. So the good Lord willing, all will go well and we will be done with this place. But I wanted to go ahead and because I haven't posted anything since we finished really with the updating. Well, finished with the, getting it all spruced up and stuff. So I wanted to do a quick video here. We did a little staging, not much because we weren't living out here, but I had some stuff left out here. And we just, decorated a little bit with it. Ron did the kitchen per my request with cupboards just in case something happened. And we ended up having to move back down here. The will of the Lord was not real clear and we were just waiting for direction. So I'm just going to do a little tour. Everything is not totally complete. Like the upstairs trim work on the windows never got finished. We never got flooring in, and that's, we priced the house accordingly in that fashion. We just ran out of money and time and we put it on the market. So, but I will try to do some comparisons. I think I've got some old pictures or videos of, you're okay. Old pictures or videos of the house when we lived here. And then we changed some rooms around. We put the kitchen back in the original area that it was in when we purchased the house. When we purchased this house in 2002 or 2003, it was desperately in need of updating then. The kitchen was dated like in 1950s or 60s. It wasn't just the visual that needed updating. It was a fixer-upper. The roof was done. We needed a roof then. And we started to do a little bit, and then Ron hurt his back and had his second back surgery. So things just really got warped and out of shape. And it just was what it was. So here we are, 21 years later, and got a lot of stuff done. So. You're okay. All right, so this was the original kitchen. We used it for a living room and also at another time for a bedroom. When we bought the house, the kitchen was it had a counter. It was, like I said, it was a dated 50s, early 60s kitchen. And down here, there was an old Formica counter that went around to a brown cast iron sink. And it came around to a built-in oven and stovetop. And like the stovetop didn't work. In fact, our first Christmas here, Christmas here. Do you remember I cooked Christmas dinner in that roasting oven? The whole thing. Mm-hmm. from the turkey to the rolls to everything. But we had been renting, and so we just were ready to have a place. But we tore everything out, and that's about when he hurt his back. So the ceiling had been had plaster, and it was in bad shape. So we went ahead and we did this with paneling and boards, just gave it a grid look, which really we thought looked really nice. Like I said, we built the cabinets as in something that we would want for ourselves, but could also be, you know, more stylish for someone else's needs. Put in a farm sink that we got from Wayfair for a super good deal. Put all new windows in except for 2 windows. The entire house has new windows. This is my Friendly Village collection. And then there's some of my Fiesta ware collection. So, but that's all going, of course. We found this vintage stove. We thought it looked really nice with the kitchen. Works really well. In fact, I've cooked in it several times, and I really like it compared to, sorry, Sherry, but my sister's modern oven. There's a total difference in it. It cooks more like a wood stove to me, and that's probably why. There was not a door here ever when this was a kitchen, or when we turned it into a living room. So then from this direction, we put those wood doors on. That one door that's closed is the bathroom. The door that's open was a enclosed back porch, and then we turned it into a bedroom, and now it's just somebody can turn it into a utility room or whatever they want. We talked about if we had to move back here, I'd turn it into my pantry. So that's all that is. Now the bathroom, I thought it turned out pretty good. He had put these floors in, or this floor in years ago, just out of pine, and aged it. We found this bathtub that worked really well in here with the look. I love my pie safe. That's definitely going. So this room, when we bought the house, had a wall there. And we turned this whole thing into a kitchen, dining area, because that's just how, you know, our family and life function. So it was better to have the great big area. And I also love having stairs in my kitchen. So that was a thing for me. I can't get a good... This area here was an entire front porch, and it went all the way through. There was not a door here. In fact, the door to the porch when we bought the place was right in the center of the wall. We turned this, when we bought, you know, we're redoing the house originally, into our pantry. But we knew that we needed to modify to make it more appealing to people purchasing that, you know, probably wouldn't have the excessive pantry that we had or the kitchen that we had. And so it works for an office. It's actually big enough for a bedroom if one needed to use it for a bedroom. And the same with this. This is basically would be a bedroom. So